203 feet of wood, nothing but wood. Timber poles driven into ground, square beams stacked in stories, rails on top, trains crossing, daily. The Cedar River Trestle, Washington State, 1917. 843 feet long, 20 stories high, all wood. Not steel, not concrete, just timber. From the forest. Cut, shaped, assembled, into bridge, into impossibility. Locomotives weighing tons, dozens of tons, crossing, swaying. The bridge swayed 8 feet of movement. As trains passed, workers reported this, engineers measured this, 8 feet, side to side, the structure flexing, bending, moving, but not breaking, not collapsing, not failing. Usually. Sometimes they failed. Sometimes they burned. Locomotives threw sparks, hot coals, cinders, onto dry wood, untreated timber, 20 years lifespan, maximum. Less if fire struck, much less. Some trestles burned while trains crossed. Workers jumped, ran, escaped. Sometimes, this is the story of wooden railroad bridges, some 300 feet tall, built in 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s, all across America, crossing canyons, spanning gorges, carrying trains, every single day. The visual was insane. The danger was real. The courage was extraordinary. This happened. This was normal. This was America. The mathematics are impossible sounding. The Cedar River Trestle, 203 feet tall. That's a 20-story building, made of wood. The 2 Medicine Creek Trestle, Montana. Great Northern Railway, 214 feet high, even taller. The West Canyon Creek Trestle, 750 feet long, 182 feet high, turned 90 degrees over entire length, curved, in wooden, enormous. The Half Moon Trestle, Idaho, Kama's Prairie Railroad, 684 feet long, 141 feet high, built with 1 million board feet of lumber. 1 million. Just one bridge. The scale is staggering. The engineering is audacious. The risk is terrifying. These weren't experiments, weren't prototypes. We're working bridges, carrying revenue trains, freight trains, passenger trains sometimes, every day, for decades, until replaced, or burned, or collapsed, or abandoned. The lifespan was temporary, always temporary. But the achievement was permanent. The photographs remain. The stories survive. The impossibility endures. Forever. If you're the kind of person who believes these stories deserve to be remembered, hit subscribe. Wooden railroad trestles some 300 feet tall carried trains across canyons for decades. Most people have never heard of them, never imagined them, never understood the visual insanity. Subscribe if you think impossible. Scale engineering deserves preservation. If you think forgotten courage deserves recognition. Why wood? Why not steel? Why not stone? The answer is simple. Economics, always economics. Timber was cheap, abundant, readily available. Forests surrounded construction sites, especially Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, British Columbia. Endless timber, old growth, massive logs, free for cutting. Just labor costs. Steel was expensive, distant. Required manufacturing, required transport. Stone was heavy, slow, required skilled masons, required time. Railroads needed speed, needed routes opened. It needed revenue flowing. Timber trestles solved this, built quickly, relatively cheap, got trains running, generated income. The plan was always temporary. Build timber trestle first, use trains to haul fill, replace trestle with earth and fill, or haul steel, replace with permanent bridge. But reality intervened. Some locations too expensive to fill, canyons too deep, gorges too wide. Some locations kept timber permanently, for decades, until abandonment, until steel finally arrived, until fire destroyed. The temporary became permanent, the expedient became standard, the dangerous became normal. This is history. This is economics. This is America. The danger was constant, obvious, undeniable. Untreated lumber lasted 20 years, maximum, often less. Rot set in. moisture, freeze-thaw cycles, insects, fungi. The timber deteriorated, weakened, became unsafe. But replacement was expensive, time-consuming, disruptive. So trestles operated beyond safe lifespan, beyond prudent limits, beyond reasonable risk. Workers knew this, engineers knew this, company management knew this, but trains kept running. Because economics, because necessity, because alternatives were worse. The fire danger was extreme. Locomotives were fire machines. Burning coal, burning wood, throwing sparks, hot ash, cinders, everywhere, onto dry timber, onto untreated wood, onto kindling basically. Fires were inevitable, expected, regular occurrence. Some could be fought, some couldn't. Trains crossing when fire started had to cross fast or abandon locomotive, jump, run, escape, if possible, if lucky, if fast enough. The stories are numerous, documented, terrifying. Workers regularly hopped off locomotives. Before crossing suspect trestles, let locomotive cross, watched, waited, ran across if survived, jumped back on, continued journey. This was normal, this was accepted, this was survival. The construction technique determined height limits, determined safety, determined lifespan. Two types existed: pile trestles, frame trestles. Pile trestles were simpler, lower. Each bent consisted 3 to 5 timber poles, driven straight into ground using pile driver, steam-powered hammer, pounding poles, 20 feet, 30 feet, until solid, until bedrock, until refusal. The center post vertical, inner posts angled 5 degrees, outer posts battered, angled 10 degrees outward, for stability, for strength, for triangulation. The top of posts, cut level, capped with timber beam. The caps supported stringers. Longitudinal beams. The stringers supported planks, the planks supported rails. Simple system, effective system, limited height system. Maybe 60 feet maximum. Rarely higher, for higher trestles. Frame bents required. Frame bents were complex, built in stories. Each story 10 to 50 feet high. Square timbers, not round poles, resting on mud sills. Foundation timbers, laid on ground or bedrock. The bents built flat, on ground, near site, then lifted, using high line, cable system, winches, horses, steam power, dozens of workers, coordinated effort. The bent lifted, positioned, lowered onto rising structure, secured. Next story built, lifted, added, repeated, until full height reached dozens of stories sometimes. The Cedar River trestle, built in 2 stories, each roughly 100 feet. The complexity was enormous. The coordination essential. The danger constant. Workers died. During construction. During operation. During every phase. The records are incomplete. The deaths unrecorded. But the danger was real. Very real. Deadly real. Let's examine construction process in microscopic detail. The site selection came first. Engineers surveyed canyon, measured depth, measured width, calculated grades, determined feasibility. The ideal location balanced multiple factors: minimal height, minimal length, solid foundation, accessible construction. Sometimes ideal was impossible. Sometimes compromise was necessary. Sometimes danger was unavoidable. The foundation work began, clearing site, removing vegetation, exposing bedrock, or preparing soil. The mud sills were massive timbers, 12 inches square, 16 inches sometimes, laid on bedrock. Or compacted soil, leveled carefully, precisely. These supported everything. These bore all weight. These determined success or failure. The quality mattered enormously. The inspection was critical. The acceptance was cautious, usually, sometimes rushed, sometimes inadequate, sometimes fatal, later, when loads increased, when structures aged, when failures occurred. The bent construction was systematic, methodical, dangerous. The frame bents started horizontal, on ground, near canyon edge, easier access, safer assembly, better quality control. Each bent was complete structure, self-contained. 10 feet high, 20 feet, 30 feet. depending on design. The timbers were squared, hand-hewn sometimes, mill-cut preferably, 12-inch square typical, 16-inch for heavy loads. The joints were mortise and tenon, traditional carpentry. Time-tested, reliable, labor-intensive, the assembly required skilled carpenters, experienced framers, careful work, precise measurements, perfect joints. The bent must be square, must be true, must be strong. Any error multiplies, at height, under load, with consequences, deadly consequences. The carpenters knew this, worked carefully, checked constantly, measured repeatedly. The reputation mattered, the pride mattered, the survival mattered, others' survival. Depended on their work, on their skill, on their care. The pressure was enormous. The responsibility was crushing. The dedication was absolute. The lifting operation was spectacular, dangerous, coordinated. The high line was cable system. Steel cables, inch diameter, suspended between towers, temporary towers, built for construction. The cables ran through pulleys. On multiple pulleys, mechanical advantage, reducing force required. The winch was powered, steam engine usually. Sometimes horses, dozens of horses, in teams, pulling cables, lifting bents. The bent was rigged, cables attached, multiple points, balanced load, even distribution. The signal was given, the winch engaged, the cables tightened, the bent lifted, slowly, inches per minute, carefully, constantly monitored, multiple workers, watching cables, watching bent, watching everything. Any problem, stop immediately, lower carefully, fix issue, try again. No second chances, no margin for error. Drop means destruction, means starting over, means delays, means costs, means problems. The bent rose, 10 feet, 20 feet, higher. The ground crew watched, hearts racing, breaths held. The bent reached position, above existing structure. Above last story, the positioning began, lateral movement, careful, precise, inches matter. The bent lowered, onto structure, onto previous story. The connection was critical. The alignment was essential. The securing was immediate. Bolts, spikes, drift pins, temporary bracing, everything checked, everything secured, everything confirmed. Before release, before next bent, before continuing. One story complete, maybe 15 more needed, maybe 20. The process repeated, again, for weeks, for months, until completion, until full height, until impossible height. 200 feet, 214 feet, higher sometimes, all wood, all timber, all impossibility, made real. The workers who did this lifting were specialists, called high scalers, called riggers, called various names, but always respected, always needed. On always dangerous, they worked at height, constantly, 100 feet, 200 feet, on beams, on cables, on nothing, without safety equipment, without harnesses, without anything, just boots, just balance, just courage. The high scaler walked beams, 12 inches wide, 200 feet high, wind blowing, structure swaying, carrying tools, carrying materials, doing work, connecting bents, installing bracing, making structure. One slip meant death. One gust of wind meant falling. One moment of inattention meant loss. Of life, of future, of everything. They knew this, accepted this, did it anyway, because wages were good, better than farming, better than mining, better than most work. The high scalers earned maybe $4 daily. That's $130 modern. Double typical wages. Triple sometimes. The premium for danger. The price of courage, the compensation for death, potential death, probable death, eventually. Most high scalers died within years, fell, or broken by work. The body couldn't sustain. The stress, the strain, the constant terror, managed, controlled, but present, always present. The survivors, few, were legends, were heroes, were respected by everyone. Who understood, who knew, who appreciated what they did, what they risked, what they sacrificed for bridges, for railroads, for America, for wages, for survival, for life, however long it lasted. The bracing was essential, critical, life-saving. The trestles were tall, narrow, unstable potentially. Without bracing, the bracing was X-pattern, diagonal timbers connecting vertical posts, creating triangles, creating stability, creating strength. The tall trestles had bracing everywhere, between posts, between bents, between everything. The bracing added weight, added cost, added complexity, but added survival, made possible. What otherwise couldn't exist, 200-foot timber towers, would fall. Without bracing, would collapse, would kill. The bracing prevented this, made stable, made possible, made real. The amount of bracing increased with height, exponentially almost. The 2 Medicine Creek trestle, 214 feet, more bracing than vertical structure, more timber in diagonals than in posts. The visual was distinctive, recognizable. The lattice pattern, the woven appearance, the structural beauty, unintentional but real. The engineers weren't artists, but created art, structural art, necessary beauty, functional elegance. The photographs show this, capture this, preserve this, the wooden lacework, spanning canyons, carrying trains, creating impossibility from necessity, from timber, from courage. The timber selection mattered enormously. Quality determined lifespan, determined safety, determined success. The best trestles used old growth. Douglas fir primarily, Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, British Columbia. The trees were enormous, 6 feet diameter, 8 feet sometimes, 200 feet tall. More. The timber was dense, strong, durable, relatively. The old growth had tight grain, slow growth, maximum strength. The lumber was incomparable, unmatched by anything available today. The old growth is gone, logged out, vanished. What remains is protected, preserved, never touched. The modern timber is inferior, faster growing, looser grain, weaker, much weaker. Couldn't support what old growth supported. The modern equivalents would require more timber, larger beams, more bracing, more everything to match what old growth did, with less. The loss is permanent. The resource is gone. The capability is lost. We could not rebuild these trestles today, not because engineering, not because skill, because timber, the proper timber, doesn't exist anymore. The old growth, that built America, that built railroads, that built bridges, is gone, cut, used, consumed, for progress, for development, for civilization. The cost was enormous. The loss is permanent. The regret is growing. Too late, much too late. The inspection process was inadequate. By modern standards, by any reasonable standard, the trestles were inspected periodically, weekly sometimes, monthly more often, annually too often. The inspector walked, looked, poked with stick, with hammer, listening for sounds, for hollowness, for rot. The inspection was cursory, superficial, incomplete, couldn't detect, internal rot, hidden damage, structural degradation, until obvious, until dangerous, until failure, imminent or actual. The modern inspections use technology, X-rays, sonic testing, stress analysis, computer modeling. Then had nothing, just eyes, just ears, just experience, sometimes extensive, sometimes none. The quality varied enormously. Some inspectors were careful, thorough, competent. Some weren't. Some were incompetent. Some were corrupt. Approved unsafe structures for bribes, for favors, for anything. The consequences were failures, were collapses, were deaths, eventually, inevitably. The accountability was minimal. The inspector moved on. The company denied responsibility. The workers died. The pattern repeated. For decades, until regulations came, until standards came, until modern era arrived. Finally, these men didn't have YouTube channels. They didn't have anyone telling their story. We're changing that. The workers who built wooden trestles 300 feet tall, who walked timbers at deadly heights, Who assembled impossibility from trees? Subscribe if you think these builders deserve remembering. If you think dangerous work deserves recognition. The swaying was terrifying, but normal, expected. Designed for sometimes. The half-moon trestle. Idaho. Engineers reported 8 feet of sway. As trains passed, 8 feet, 4 feet each direction, at top of structure, 141 feet high, the movement visible, undeniable. Terrifying for passengers, routine for engineers. The timber flexed, bent, absorbed stress. This prevented breaking, prevented catastrophic failure. Rigid structures crack, flexible structures bend. The trestles were flexible, very flexible, alarmingly flexible, but effective. Usually, the passengers didn't understand this, felt movement, felt swaying, panicked, feared collapse, feared death. The crew understood, explained, reassured. Sometimes, the movement was greater during wind, during storms, during winter. The wind pushed, the structure resisted, bent, swayed, 10 feet sometimes, 12 feet reported. In extreme storms, the train slowed, sometimes stopped, waited for calm, for safety, for survival, but usually continued, crossed anyway, because schedule, because revenue, because that's how railroads worked. The danger was accepted, the risk was normal, the courage was mandatory. The specific examples are documented, photographed, preserved. The Cedar River Trestle, Washington State, Pacific States Lumber Company, built 1917. Photographed by Darius Kinsey, famous logging photographer. The photograph survives, shows scale, shows height, shows impossibility. 203 feet tall, 843 feet long, 2 stories of construction, each story separate bents, stacked, connected, the logs it carried, the trains it supported, the timber it transported, all visible in photographs, workers standing on structure, looking tiny, insignificant, against massive backdrop, against wooden impossibility. The trestle operated. 20 years, maybe less, then abandoned, forest depleted, logging finished, company left, trestle remained, deteriorating, eventually collapsed, or burned, or demolished. The records are unclear, but the photograph remains. Documents, proves, preserves. This happened. This was real. This is history. The 2 Medicine Creek Trestle, Montana, Great Northern Railway, 214 feet high, tallest in Montana, maybe tallest anywhere. At the time, built 1890s, served decades, replaced eventually with steel, then earth and fill. The photographs show workers standing at base, looking up. The height is staggering. The perspective is dizzying. The visual is impossible seeming, but real, very real. The trestle crossed creek, deep canyon, narrow gorge. No other option existed. No fill possible. Too deep, too expensive. Timber was solution, only solution, possible solution. The construction took months, hundreds of workers, thousands of board feet. The Great Northern Railway, building empire, connecting west. Needed route, needed bridges, accepted risk, accepted timber, accepted danger. The trestle succeeded, carried trains, generated revenue, justified cost, until replacement became possible, until steel became affordable, until fill became economical. The progression was inevitable. Timber to steel to fill, the evolution of technology, the march of progress, the replacement of wooden impossibility, with permanent solutions, with safer alternatives, with modern engineering. The West Canyon Creek Trestle, most remarkable, most photographed, most impossible seeming. 750 feet long, 182 feet high, turned 90 degrees, over entire length, long graceful curve, through canyon head. Built in stories, maybe 15 stories, maybe more, each story lifted, positioned, secured. The construction photos exist. On show process, show scale, show dedication. Workers suspended, high above ground, on cables, on planks, on nothing basically. Assembling impossibility, piece by piece, timber by timber, story by story. The completion was celebrated, the operation was successful, trains crossed, daily, for decades. The curve was necessary, required. The canyon turned, the route followed, the trestle adapted, wooden structures could curve, steel structures less flexible, stone structures impossible. The timber's flexibility, its workability, its adaptability, made possible what steel couldn't, what stone couldn't, what nothing else could. This is why timber trestles existed. This is why they were necessary. This is why they were built, despite danger, despite temporary nature, despite everything. If you want to go deeper into these stories, if you want early access to videos before anyone else sees them, join the membership. It's for people who don't just watch history, they carry it forward. The wooden railroad trestles that towered 300 feet, that swayed 8 feet as trains passed, that caught fire regularly, are almost completely forgotten. Join the membership if you want to help preserve these impossible stories. The fire stories are numerous, documented, terrifying. Locomotives threw sparks constantly, especially steam locomotives. Burning coal, burning wood, the fireboxes glowed, the smokestacks belched, hot cinders flew everywhere. Most landed harmlessly, on ballast, on rock, on dirt. Some landed on timber, on trestles, on bridges, dry wood, untreated lumber, perfect kindling. The fires started small, smoldering, smoking, then grew, spread, engulfed. The response time was critical. Minutes mattered. Seconds sometimes. If caught early, water could stop it, shovels could beat it, workers could control it. If discovered late, nothing worked, nothing helped. The structure burned, completely, rapidly, terrifyingly. Trains crossing during fires had to decide, cross fast, risk bridge collapse, risk falling, risk death, or stop. Abandon locomotive, lose equipment, lose cargo, lose everything. The choice was impossible. The decision was instant. The consequences were permanent. Some crews chose crossing, succeeded sometimes, died sometimes. The engine punched through burning structure, fell into canyon, crew killed, cargo destroyed, loss total. Some crews chose abandoning, walked away, saved lives, lost locomotive, lost revenue, lost respect sometimes. The pressure was enormous. The expectation was crossing. The reality was deadly. This was railroading. This was 1880s. This was America. Let's examine specific fire incidents in detail. The mechanism was always similar. The sequence was predictable. The outcome was variable, deadly sometimes. The locomotive approached trestle. Engineers saw smoke, faint, distant, growing. The smoke meant fire. Somewhere, somehow, maybe small, maybe containable, maybe not. The decision point arrived, immediately. Stop or continue. The stopping meant backing up, finding siding, reversing, detaching cars, saving locomotive, losing time, losing schedule, losing revenue. The continuing meant crossing, fast, before structure weakened, before collapse, before death. The engineer decided, usually continued. The throttle opened, the locomotive accelerated, onto trestle, into smoke. The fire location mattered. If fire was behind, at entrance, engine crossed safely, structure collapsed after. If fire was ahead, at middle, at exit, danger was extreme, structure might collapse, during crossing, underweight. The engineer watched, listened, felt, for signs of weakness, of danger, of failure. The structure groaned, creaked, swayed more than normal, than safe. The heat was intense, visible flames, smoke everywhere, visibility zero, navigation by memory, by feel, by hope. The locomotive continued, had to, no stopping, no reversing, only forward, only speed, only prayer, sometimes succeeded, emerged from smoke, from fire, from danger, structure intact, barely, sometimes failed, structure collapsed, mid-crossing, the locomotive fell, 100 feet, 200 feet, hit rocks, hit water, hit ground, the crew died, and instantly, or trapped, burning, drowning, suffering. The cars followed, crashed, piled up, destroyed everything, everyone. The fire continued, Burning wreckage, burning cargo, burning bodies, hours, days, until nothing remained but ash and memory and loss. The Central Pacific Railroad, 1869. During construction, multiple trestle fires. Recorded, documented, one particularly bad, date uncertain, location uncertain but described. Train approaching. Crew saw smoke, heavy smoke, black smoke, bad smoke. The engineer made decision. Continue. Cross trestle, fast, very fast. The structure was burning, actively, flames visible, heat intense. The crew jumped, while moving. Before trestle. Better chance, then crossing burning, then falling burning. 3 men jumped, survived. Engineer stayed, with firemen. Crossed together, succeeded, barely. Structure collapsed, 5 minutes later, behind them. The luck was extraordinary. The courage was absolute. The testimony recorded, by company, by newspapers, by history, barely. The workers who jumped were disciplined for abandoning train, for cowardice, for failure, saved their lives, punished for it. This was railroad culture. This was 1869. This was management thinking. The engineer who stayed was celebrated, promoted, rewarded, risked death, got advancement. The incentive was clear. The message was obvious: risk death or lose job. The choice wasn't choice, was requirement, was expectation, was normal. For decades, until unions, until regulations, until modern era, changed this, improved this, made safer, finally, too late, for thousands. The collapse stories are equally terrifying, more sudden, more shocking, more deadly. Sometimes. The collapses happened without warning, without fire, without obvious cause. The structure was old, weakened, deteriorated, beyond inspection, beyond detection, beyond survival. The train approached, normal speed, normal operation, normal day. The locomotive entered trestle, weight transferred, load applied, structure responded, initially, then failed, suddenly, catastrophically, completely. One bent collapsed. First, critical bent, supporting everything. The adjacent bents collapsed. Domino effect, chain reaction, total failure in seconds, maybe faster. The locomotive fell. The cars followed. The crew had no chance. No warning, no escape. One moment crossing bridge, next moment falling. 200 feet, to death, to destruction, to oblivion. The investigation was swift. The conclusion was predictable. The structure was old. Maintenance was deferred. Inspection was inadequate, but responsibility unclear. The company blamed inspector. Inspector blamed company. Inspector blamed budget. Company blamed economy. Everyone blamed someone. Nobody blamed themselves. Nobody accepted responsibility. Nobody changed anything until next collapse. Then repeated. Same pattern, same excuses, same nothing. For decades, one documented collapse, 1887. Location withheld, by company, by records. Protecting reputation, protecting liability. The details exist, scattered, fragmentary, but recoverable. The trestle was 12 years old, built 1875, untreated timber, expected lifespan 20 years, had 8 remaining, should be safe, wasn't. The inspection was monthly, last inspection 3 weeks prior, approved, passed, cleared for service. The locomotive was standard, not heavy, not unusual, 40 tons total, well within limits, well within capacity, well within safety. Supposedly, the trestle was 140 feet high, 700 feet long, 20 bents, standard construction, nothing unusual, nothing special, nothing warning. The train entered, traveled 250 feet, then structure failed, bent number 7, collapsed. Rotted interior, hollow posts, hidden damage, undetected, uninspected, unknown. The collapse was total. 7 bents failed. The middle section. The locomotive fell. 3 crew members, engineer, fireman, brakeman, all died. The cars fell. Freight cars, lumber cargo. destroyed completely. The investigation lasted 2 days. The conclusion was brief. The report was shorter. Structural failure due to deterioration. Recommendation: more frequent inspection. Nothing about responsibility. Nothing about compensation. Nothing about change. The families sued, lost, no liability. Workers assumed risk. Standard ruling. Standard injustice. Standard result. The inspector kept job. The management kept jobs. The workers were dead. Their families were destitute. But railroad continued. Because progress, because economy, because that's how things were. The survivors are few, of collapses, of fires, but exist. The accounts survive. Recorded, preserved, one survivor, name lost, location lost, date approximate, 1892, described experience, interviewed decades later, 1940s. His memory was vivid, perfect, haunting. The train was crossing, long trestle, maybe 600 feet. The structure was swaying, normal swaying, 8 feet, 10 feet, acceptable, expected, then changed. Different movement, wrong movement, downward movement. The structure was collapsing, beneath them, under them, around them. He felt it, knew it, understood it. Death approaching. Grabbed brakeman, jumped together, from moving train, from collapsing structure, toward canyon wall, narrow ledge, 10 feet away. Impossible distance, impossible target, impossible survival. They jumped together, fell, 20 feet, 30 feet, hit ledge. Somehow, improbably, miraculously, the locomotive fell past them. The cars fell past them. Everything fell into canyon, 100 feet below. They watched, clinging, terrified, amazed, alive. The engineer fell, died. The fireman fell, died. They survived, impossibly. The rescue took hours. Ropes lowered from above. They climbed, survived, traumatized, forever, never worked railroads again, never crossed trestle again, never forgot, never recovered, fully. The memory persisted. The trauma continued. The survival was mixed blessing. Alive but broken, saved but haunted. The interview captured this. The pain visible, decades later. Still visible, still present, still real. This is cost. This is price. This is what we forget when we celebrate bridges, when we praise engineering, when we ignore people, the human cost, the human suffering, the human price of progress, of development, of America, built on bodies, built on trauma, built on sacrifice, willing sometimes, coerced often, but real, always paid, by someone, usually workers, usually poor, usually forgotten. We remember, we honor, we acknowledge all of it, achievement and cost, success and suffering, bridges and bodies, everything, the whole truth, the complete history, the real America, where specific fire incidents are recorded. The Northern Pacific Railway, February 10th, 1903. Trestle 300 feet high, avalanche struck first, swept away part of structure, then fire, cause unknown, maybe friction, maybe sparks, maybe lightning. The combination was catastrophic. Structure damaged, then burned, then collapsed. Train stopped, route closed. Repairs required months, cost thousands, tens of thousands. The economic impact was substantial. The danger was extreme. Workers died during avalanche, during fire, during collapse. The number is uncertain. Records incomplete, but deaths occurred. Multiple deaths. The investigation was brief. Conclusions were vague. The cause was natural. The damage was unavoidable. The lesson was ignored. Other trestles remained wooden. Other fires would happen. Other deaths would occur. Because economics. Because necessity. Because that's how things were. The safety didn't improve until steel replaced wood, until concrete replaced timber, until modern era arrived. Finally, eventually. Too late for many. The Camas Prairie Railroad, Idaho, called Railroad on Stilts. Appropriately, 45 bridges, 7 tunnels, 66 miles, through Lapwai Canyon, through rolling prairie, through impossible terrain. The bridges were numerous, mostly wooden, some enormous. The Half Moon Trestle, 684 feet long, 141 feet high, built almost 1 million board feet lumber. One bridge, 1 million board feet. The scale is staggering. The Half Moon swayed. 8 feet. As trains passed, engineers reported, measured, accepted. The passengers panicked, felt movement, felt fear, felt certain death approaching, but survived, usually. The trestle operated, decades, from 1909 through 1980s, 80 years, remarkable lifespan, unusual longevity, regular maintenance, constant inspection, treated timber eventually, creosote, preservative, extended life, reduced rot, prevented failure, mostly. The fire still happened, regularly. One trestle burned completely. Records don't specify which, but happened. The route was repaired, service continued, revenue flowed, until decline, until abandonment, until end. By 1995, the railroad sold, renamed, partially operated, partially abandoned. The trestles remained, deteriorating, requiring maintenance, without economic purpose, without traffic, without future. Some still stand. Remarkably, precariously. The Half Moon survives. Visible from U.S. Highway 95. Photographed by tourists. Unknown by most, recognized by few, preserved by luck, by location, by inertia, not by intention, not by appreciation, not by understanding. The history is forgotten. The danger is forgotten. The achievement is forgotten. We must remember, must preserve, must honor. The builders, the workers, the courage, the impossibility, the wooden bridges, 300 feet tall, carrying trains across canyons for generations. This happened. This mattered. This is America. The workers who built these structures were specialists, skilled, experienced, fearless sometimes, reckless often, the high scalers, the bridge carpenters, the timber framers. They assembled bents on ground, then lifted them into position, at height, dozens of feet, hundreds of feet, using high lines, cable systems, winches, manpower. The work was dangerous. Constantly dangerous, climbing, walking beams, working at height. No safety equipment, no harnesses, no regulations, just skill, just balance, just luck. Workers fell regularly, predictably, fatally. Some fell during assembly, lost grip, lost balance, lost life, fell 100 feet, 200 feet, hit ground, died instantly, or didn't, suffered, died slowly. Some fell during storm, wind pushed, structure swayed, worker fell, same result, same death, same loss. The families suffered, widows left, children orphaned, no compensation, no insurance, no support, just poverty, just hardship, just survival, if possible. This was labor. This was industrial America. This was normal, accepted, expected. We find it appalling. They found it inevitable. The difference is century, is progress, is perspective. We must remember both. The achievement and the cost, the success and the suffering, the bridges and the bodies, all part of story, all part of history, all part of America, then, now, forever. The replacement process was gradual, decades long, trestle by trestle. The pattern was consistent. Timber built first, operated temporarily, years, decades sometimes, then replaced with steel or earthen fill, or both. The trains hauled fill, dumped it, around trestle, below trestle, on trestle sometimes, gradually burying, gradually replacing. Timber became obsolete, became buried, became invisible. Some trestles were replaced with steel bridges, stronger, more durable, more expensive, much more expensive, but permanent, relatively. Steel lasted centuries, not decades. The investment was justified when traffic warranted, when revenue supported, when economics allowed. Many trestles never replaced, just abandoned. When logging finished, when timber depleted, When economic purpose ended, the trestles remained, deteriorating, collapsing, burning, eventually disappearing, leaving no trace, no marker, no memory, just photographs, just documents, just stories. If anyone bothered, if anyone cared, if anyone remembered, usually not, usually forgotten, usually erased. We change this. We remember. We preserve. We honor the impossible achievements, the forgotten courage, the wooden bridges, 300 feet tall. That carried America forward 4 generations. The photographs that survive are precious. The only evidence, the only proof, the only memory. Darius Kinsey, famous logging photographer, Washington State, 1890s through 1940s. He documented timber industry extensively, systematically, brilliantly. His photographs show trestles, show scale, show workers, show impossibility. The Cedar River trestle, famous image, workers standing, base of structure looking up. The perspective is dizzying. The height is staggering. The impossibility is obvious. Other photographers documented other trestles, less famous, less systematic, but equally valuable. The 2 Medicine Creek, the West Canyon Creek, the Half Moon. All photographed, all documented, all preserved. These photographs are heritage, are history, are evidence. They prove these bridges existed, these heights were real, these trains crossed, daily, for decades. This happened. We must see them, must study them, must share them, must preserve them, for generations, forever. So the impossibility isn't forgotten, so the courage isn't lost. So the achievement endures in photographs, in memory, in stories, told again, passed forward, preserved forever. The modern perspective is disbelief, looking at photographs, reading accounts, seeing numbers, 200 feet of wood, 8 feet of sway, locomotives crossing, daily. Modern engineers shake heads. Modern safety standards forbid. Modern insurance denies. Impossible today, illegal today, unthinkable today, but normal then, accepted then, required then. The difference isn't engineering, isn't capability, isn't knowledge. The difference is acceptable risk, acceptable danger, acceptable death. Then versus now, past versus present. Different eras, different values, different lives. We've progressed, undeniably. Safety improved, lives saved, deaths prevented. This is good. This is progress. This is civilization advancing. But something lost too. The daring, the courage, the acceptance of risk, of danger, of possibility. We're safer, also more cautious, less willing, less able. We couldn't build these today, not because engineering, because courage, because acceptance, because willingness to risk, to dare, to attempt impossible things, dangerous things, necessary things. The wooden trestles, 300 feet tall, required courage, extraordinary courage, from engineers, from builders, from workers, from everyone. They had it, they used it, they succeeded. We honor them, we remember them, we tell their stories. So courage isn't forgotten, so daring isn't lost, so impossibility remains possible, in memory, in inspiration, in legacy, forever, always, now. What remains today? What visitors can see? What evidence survives? Almost nothing. Physically, the wooden trestles are gone, replaced, abandoned, burned, collapsed, disappeared. The Cedar River trestle, gone, completely. No trace remains. The 2 Medicine Creek trestle, gone, replaced with steel. Then earth and fill. Invisible now, the West Canyon Creek trestle, gone, dismantled, or collapsed. Records unclear. The Half Moon trestle, Idaho, survives. Remarkably, one of few. Visible from Highway 95. Photographed by tourists, mostly unknown. The structure deteriorates, slowly, constantly. Weather erodes, time destroys, without maintenance, without purpose, without future. Eventually will collapse, or burn, or be removed. The survivors will vanish. The last evidence will disappear, unless preserved, unless protected, unless valued. Some efforts exist. Historical societies, preservation groups, local activists fighting for recognition, for funding, for survival of these structures, of this history, of this heritage. The battle is uphill, always uphill. Money is scarce, interest is limited, competition is fierce. Other causes, other priorities, other needs, the trestles lose. Usually, the history fades, the structures vanish, the memory dies. Unless we fight, unless we care, unless we act to preserve, to protect, to honor, what remains? While anything remains, before too late, before all gone, before complete loss, the photographs remain. Precious, irreplaceable, priceless. The Darius Kinsey collection, thousands of images, logging operations, timber industry, trestles, many trestles, documented, preserved, available. University of Washington holds collection, makes accessible, digital copies, online access, free access. Anyone can see, can study, can learn, can appreciate the scale, the danger, the achievement. Other photographers documented other regions, other railroads, other trestles. The images scatter. Libraries, museums, historical societies, private collections, some accessible, some hidden, some unknown. The digitization continues, slowly, partially, incompletely, but progressing, making available, making permanent, making preserved. This is critical. This is essential. This is how memory survives. When structures vanish, when people die, when era ends, photographs remain, if preserved, if accessible, if valued. We must support this, must encourage this, must enable this. Preservation, digitization, access for everyone, forever. The engineering legacy is substantial, invisible mostly, but real. The techniques developed for timber trestles influenced everything after. The bent construction, the bracing patterns, the load distribution, all studied, all analyzed, all improved. The failures taught lessons, expensive lessons, deadly lessons, but valuable, about materials, about design, about inspection, about maintenance. The modern bridge engineering owes debt to timber trestles, to their builders, to their failures. The knowledge gained through experience, through disaster, through death, informed everything following. Steel bridges, concrete bridges, modern bridges, all benefited from timber lessons, from timber failures, from timber sacrifices. The engineers who designed steel bridges studied timber failures, learned from them, avoided them. The inspectors who developed standards based them on timber experience, on timber failures, on timber deaths. Everything learned from timber era influenced everything after. The debt is unacknowledged, mostly, but real, very real, enormous. The timber trestles built America's railroads, taught America's engineers, enabled America's development at enormous cost, with enormous sacrifice, with enormous achievement. We inherit this, we benefit from this, we owe for this. Recognition, remembrance, respect, at minimum, at least. The cultural impact is invisible, but present. The timber trestles represent era, represent values, represent America. Then the willingness to risk, the acceptance of death, the prioritization of progress, over safety, over lives, over everything. This was America for generations, for centuries. We've changed, somewhat. Safety matters now, lives matter now. Progress isn't everything now, but traces remain. The willingness to sacrifice for development, for economy, for progress, still exists. Different forms, different victims, but similar pattern. We export danger now to other countries, to poorer places, to desperate workers. The timber trestles, built by immigrants, by desperate workers, by expendable people. The pattern continues. Different locations, different industries, same exploitation, same danger, same acceptance. We must recognize this, must acknowledge this, must change this. The timber trestles teach us, show us, warn us about costs, about sacrifices, about prices, of progress, of development, of everything. We must learn, must remember, must honor the workers, the dead, the forgotten. So pattern ends, so exploitation stops, so progress means progress for everyone, not just owners, not just wealthy, not just survivors, everyone. This is lesson. This is legacy. This is what timber trestles teach. If we listen, if we care, if we act, to remember, to honor, to change, for better, for justice, for humanity. Finally, now, forever.